Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again to progenitive LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again, I know for most of us here in the United States, we've been hit with a cold spell. I'm here in Ohio. It's about -5 right now, so we hope everyone is safe, sound mind, body, and spirit. Then, of course, but most importantly, warm as well, right? With that being said, we have a great show today. We're going to be discussing, our show is entitled, Let Your Motto Be Resistance. We're going to be honoring the life and legacy of one Henry Highland Garnet. I would say that one more time, let your motto be resistance. We're going to be honoring the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. Henry Highland Garnet is one of the unsung heroes in that great line of that Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. He is one of the less known, I would argue, criminally less known Black nationalists of the 19th century. We know, unfortunately, he's oftentimes overshadowed by one David Walker and a Julia Cooper, Maria Taylor, of course, Martin Delany, and of course, James T. Holly. However, I think that he's one of the greatest Black nationalists of the 19th century, and today is his 207th birthday. So I'm gonna state that one more time, that today, December 23rd, 2022, is his 207th birthday. He was born December 23rd, 1815 in Eastern Shore, Maryland. He was born into slavery, but of course was able to subsequently gain his freedom, and he was educated at the African Free School in New York City. So I think we're going to have a great show today where we're going to be discussing Let Your Motto Be Resistance, honoring the life and legacy of one Henry Highland Garnet. If you're watching, make sure you hit the like button. Do a favor for me, hit that like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, and the notification bell, and share with all your friends and well-wishers. I think we're going to have a good time tonight while we're staying warm in the friendly confines of these YouTube streets, right? So just to get the ball started, as you all know, I have to go over the ground rules, right? So the link is in the chat, so I'm going to have you all tap in a minute, we'll put the link in the chat. The link should be in the description. If it's not, I will put the link in the chat momentarily. We welcome diversity of thought here at Lumumba Speaks. We know that African people, we are not a monolithic people. We know politically, socially, economically, we have different worldviews, different perspectives, and different values. That is welcome here at Lumumba Speaks. And you do not have to be a Black nationalist. You do not have to be a Pan-Africanist. You do not have to be someone who believes in the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion in the face of white hegemony to tap in and be part of the conversation. However, you cannot, under any circumstances, use racial epithets of any kind when discussing or describing Black people, irrespective of their behavior, their geographic place of origin, political ideology, religious beliefs, etc. This is a place of Black empowerment. And we know that of the three ends of Black power, self-respect, self-determination, and self-defense. First and foremost, we must respect ourselves as African people. And so I don't allow racial epithets of any kind to be used on my channel. Third, facts over feelings, right? If you have an argument, if we having a rigorous, intellectually stimulating debate, we want to argue what? We want to attack the argument, not the person, right? So facts over feelings. And then last but not least, and probably even most importantly, I do not allow anyone to come on my channel and make a claim that is fundamentally false. If you have a different perspective, that is quite all right. But if you make a claim, that is patently false, fundamentally false, I will shut you down, right? This is my platform, and I'm responsible for the information that is disseminated on my platform. And I believe that if to allow someone to make a claim that's patently false, of course, it undermines my perspective, undermines what I'm doing here on my channel. Also, part of our mission here at Lumumba Speaks is not to vilify or exonerate, but to simply challenge conventional thinking and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So I'll state that one more time. Part of our mission here at Lumumba Speaks, we know we are a Black empowerment initiative in which we want to help restore people to our traditional greatness. But part of our mission as well, we have these intellectually rigorous, robust, and extremely stimulating conversations, is to make sure that we're not vilifying or exonerating anyone. Our goal is simply to challenge conventional thinking and re-examine what has previously been held as fact. So with that being said, we're going to tap right into it. Let your motto be resistance, honoring the life and, of course, legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. Many people may be aware, but he was one of the prominent and preeminent Black nationalists of the 19th century. Many argue that Black nationalism or Pan-Africanism, that the 19th century was a golden era of Black militancy, right? In fact, Henry Highland Garnet oftentimes his moniker was the Militant Abolitionist. He was extremely prominent in the abolitionist movement. We're going to get into, of course, some of his politics in the abolitionist movement. As many of you meet, oftentimes, even some of our sisters may take umbrage with some of his perspectives and views and practices in the abolitionist movement, but we will get into that. But if you want to learn more, not only about Henry Highland Garnet, but also about the classical era of Black nationalism, I would behoove all of you to, if you can, get a chance to purchase his book, Classical Black Nationalism, From the American Revolution to Marcus Garvey. Is edited, let's see here, by William Jeremiah Moses. Okay, so once again, Classical Black Nationalism, From the American Revolution to Marcus Garvey gives us a historiographic overview of some of the prominent and most preeminent, of course, charismatic leaders of the Black nationalist movement from the American Revolution to Marcus Garvey. And we know that the 19th century is sandwiched in there. Butter Barana asked the question, what was Frederick Douglass B for Garnet? I read they were not on speaking terms at the time of his death. That is true, brother. That is true. Appreciate you tapping in. We're going to get into that. You're getting a little ahead of me here, but that is quite all right. We're going to get into that. And part of that is rooted in due to the infamous, I would dare say famous, notoriously famous speech that Henry Highland Garnet gave at the tender age of 27 at the, let me see if I can pull this up rather quickly, at the National Convention of Colored Citizens in Buffalo, New York. So we would get into that in a little bit, and we would talk about why, of course, they had the beef. We know oftentimes, unfortunately, we find in the Black leadership community that oftentimes individuals aren't able to have amicable relations, and we know that there's a sordid history of that. But we would get into that. So just, I'm gonna give a brief overview, of course, of who Henry Highland Garnet was, and then we would get into that particular beef and why that manifested. So appreciate you, Brother Bawana. I'm gonna put the link in the chat as well. I just noticed I didn't put the link in the description, so my apologies for that. Pole Sana in the language of Kiswahili. As we all know, I hope you all are prepping for Kwanzaa. We know Kwanzaa will be here in 3 days. We'll be starting off by celebrating the first and foundational principle of Kwanzaa, which I thought so I may even do a broadcast, or maybe a short broadcast, or just post a video each day on each principle, why they're important, and what I do year long to, of course, celebrate and practice these principles. So we may do that. You can all let me know if that is something that you all will be interested in viewing and seeing. And of course, I probably will even light the candle each day as well. So with that being said, Henry Highland Garnet, born on this day 207 years ago in, of course, Eastern Shore, Maryland, now known as Chesterville, Maryland, and Kent County, Maryland. He was an African-American abolitionist, minister, educator, and of course, orator. He was a great public speaker. He escaped from slavery as a child in Maryland with his family, and he grew up, of course, in New York City, where he attended the African Free School. He became known as an advocate of militant abolitionism, but his prominent basis for abolitionism was, of course, his Christian religion. As we know, many of our African ancestors who suffered the indignities of chattel enslavement were indoctrinated with the Christian faith, but oftentimes, in some way, shape, or form, they practiced what I would call a proto form of Black liberation theology, in which they took the religion and used it as a weapon, weaponized it as a mechanism to advocate and fight for their own freedom. So we definitely want to, and I know how we feel about, trying to Africanize, alien religious texts, but I think this is a situation in which we can dare say that they reverse engineered the religion to work to the benefit of them. Of course, Nat Turner would be a prominent example of that as well. So Henry Highland Garnet, also, he was a supporter of immigration of free African Americans to Mexico, Liberia, and of course the West Indies. And I think this is rather important because, oftentimes when we have individuals who are FBA, ADOS sympathizers, they make the argument that African Americans do not have a legacy of running, right? We have a legacy of fighting. They kind of quote a Jay-Z line where Jay-Z says, Hov doesn't run, Hov stands and fight. Hov's a soldier. Hov been fighting all his life, right? And you could just, of course, we hear that with the FBA ADOS movement and many of the sympathizers, but we know that it really isn't running at all. Unfortunately, we know that African people living under the vicissitudes of chattel enslavement and, of course, subsequent other forms of social control, such as sharecropping, black codes, Jim Crow, the new Jim Crow, et cetera, convict leasing, we tend to find that, as Malcolm X stated, anywhere is better than here. So they're looking for reprieve, right? And wherever you can find that reprieve, we know that oftentimes you have to find that reprieve outside of the borders of America. So this isn't an issue of running. Most African people with sense are going to say we need to get the HE-double hockey sticks out of here because we can't find any type of freedom, or as Marcus Garvey said, that we will never be treated as human beings here in America. This is why we need to go home. And even Malcolm X, even after he returned from several trips to Africa, and even at this historic and well-publicized Hajj to Mecca, still argued that the ultimate solution is we needed to go home and get the HE-double hockey sticks out of the good old US of A. But as Brother Barwana asked, the major issue that I would argue really raised Henry Highland Garnet's public profile took place at the tender age of 27, where he gave a speech entitled "The Call to Rebellion." So just, if you want to just put this in context, in the mid-19th century, maybe some of the 1800s here, 1843, 1850s, before the Civil War, prominent abolitionists, or even grassroots abolitionists, believed in moral persuasion as a way of trying to end slavery, right? Leaning on, of course, white philanthropic support, leaning on, of course, the white power structure to come to senses, to have this, what some would call a come to Jesus moment regarding the horrors and indignities of chattel enslavement. Henry Highland Garnet, he took a different perspective. He advocated and argued that in order to end slavery, and he argues this in a speech entitled "A Call to Rebellion," he argues that African Americans, enslaved African Americans, must take up arms and fight, literally overthrow their slave act. He promoted armed rebellion, so they had to literally overthrow their slave masters. And this was an issue that, of course, many abolitionists, both black and white, took umbrage with, right? They considered his ideas too radical. They argued that it could damage the cause for the abolition movement. And of course, this is something that Frederick Douglass took umbrage with, right? And this is one of the major reasons why they had a falling out, was because of his calling for an armed rebellion of enslaved African Americans to fight against, of course, the indignities of chattel enslavement and against their slave masters. So, and then last but not least, one of the rather peculiar facts of Henry Highland Garnet's life is that he was against women's leadership in the abolition movement. So many people may say, wow, this man was an advocate, but he was against it. And of course, he went out and started his own organization, or partnered in the organization, due to, of course, the American Anti-Slavery Society, right? The American and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society, due to, of course, he and many of his, many other prominent black ministers being against women's leadership in the abolition movement. So also, he's known for stating, "Let your motto be resistance," because this was what he stated to the brothers and sisters at the convention in Buffalo, New York in 1843, where he states, and I quote, "Let your motto be resistance, resistance, resistance. No oppressed people have ever secured their liberty without resistance. What kind of resistance you had better make, you must decide by the circumstances that surround you. And according to the suggestion of expediency, brethren, adieu, trust in the living God, labor for the peace of the human race, and remember that you are 4 million strong." So this is, end quote. So this is what he stated at the end of his speech that he gave at the National Convention of Colored People in 1843 in Buffalo, New York, at the tender age, of course, of 27. So the link is in the chat. We want to honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. As I said before, he is one of the lesser known, I would argue, criminally lesser known prominent black nationalists of the 19th century. He's oftentimes overshadowed by more charismatic and prominent individuals such as Dr. just put some respect on Dr. Anna Julia Cooper's name. I would be remiss in my duty if I didn't do that. Of course, David Walker and his appeal to the colored citizens of the world, Maria Stewart, Martin Delaney, who's considered the father of Black nationalism, and of course, James T. Holly, Bishop James T. Holly, put some respect to him and his name as well, an African-American minister, church leader who, of course, immigrated to Haiti. So with that being said, the question that I have is, what will you resist today, right? And honoring the legacy, the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet, want to know what will you resist today? So the link is in the chat. Definitely want you all to tap in, answer that question, and of course we can open up and have a conversation about the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet and then the other related issues as well. So Brother Bawana, I know you posted a question in the comments, so definitely hope you could chime in and share your perspective. You can let me know, and then of course you all can let me know as well if you are familiar with Henry Highland Garnet. Had you heard of him before, and if not, of course, we can kind of open up the conversation a little bit more about his life, what he did, and why he is someone worthy of veneration as one of the great ancestors, as I state that ad nauseum, who is in that great line of divine that is, of course, the Black radical tradition, audacious self-assertion. And of course, last but not least, I also want to make sure that you all, if you are interested, grab this book, Classical Black Nationalism, From the American Revolution to Marcus Garvey, edited by William Jeremiah Moses. This is a great read if you want to study on the classical era of Black nationalism, going all the way back to the American Revolution, and of course, ending with Marcus Garvey. So definitely think that you all should take a look at this if you're interested in tapping in and learning a little bit more about some of the historical roots and development of Black nationalism. So with that being said, the link is in the chat. We are here to honor, the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. His infamous quote, "Let your motto be resistance," of course, was given in 1843 at the tender age of 27 at the National Convention of Colored People in Buffalo, New York, in which he implored that the abolitionist movement move from moral persuasion to advocating for armed rebellion of enslaved African Americans. And as I stated, Brother Barana, that is the preeminent reason why Frederick Douglass had a falling out with, of course, Minister Henry Highland Garnet. And we also need to do a one on Bishop Henry McNeil Turner. He was born on the 1st of February, McNeil Turner. So I'm definitely going to make sure I do that. We do a show on Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, James T. Holly. Matter of fact, I'm just going to do, I think what we're going to do is we're going to start doing, hopefully once a week, I can highlight a prominent leader, right, in the Black nationalist and Pan-African struggle. So, because there's a number of individuals that I don't think many people know about. And I think that they're not getting their just due, their just shine. And I think we know that they committed their lives to African redemption at home and abroad by any means necessary. So we definitely want to highlight them and give them their praise and accolades and give them their flowers, although they're not here, right? So with that being said, tap in. The link is in the chat. We're here to discuss and honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. Let your motto be resistance is the phrase that he is known for. And so we'll be asking the question this evening, and I hope you all are staying warm. As I said before, we were hit by what they like to call a Arctic vortex, right? So as I said it before, it's about -5 here in Ohio where I'm located, but we've been hit with an Arctic vortex. But the question is, what will you resist today, right? Henry Highland Garnet, his motto was he argued, opined to let your motto be resistance. And we want to know, what will you resist today? As I said before, Henry Highland Garnet is one of the more criminally underknown Black nationalists of the 19th century, oftentimes overlooked by, of course, charismatic figures such as Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, Anna Julia Cooper. As many of you may be aware, Anna Julia Cooper was one of the primary organizers of the first Pan-African Conference that took place at the behest of Henry Sylvester Williams. Right, Pan-African Congress that took place at the behest of Henry Sylvester Williams. And of course, that conference or Congress was held in London, England. Many people may be unaware that Henry Sylvester Williams, of course, coined the term Pan-Africanism with the help of Sister Kinloch, who was of South African extraction. So definitely want to give a shout out to Henry Sylvester Williams. I think I have a show coming up on him in March of next year on his birthday, where we're going to be giving Henry Sylvester Williams his flowers for, of course, developing and coining the term of Pan-Africanism. So definitely want to give a shout out to the Trinidadian barrister. And I always let people know that I think Trinidad and Tobago have developed more prominent Pan-Africanists. They developed more Pan-Africanists per capita than I think any country in the world. So definitely want to give our flowers to the brothers and sisters in Trinidad and Tobago for training out some very strong brothers and sisters who are committed to, of course, the cause for African redemption at home and abroad. But with that being said, we are here to let your motto be resistance and honor the life and legacy of one Henry Highland Garnet. The link is in the chat. Tap in, share with us what you know about Henry Highland Garnet. If you don't know much about Henry Highland Garnet, we could come in and we could have a conversation about him. As I said before, I think he's one of the more criminally unknown, less spoken about Black nationalist leaders of the 19th century. But as I said before, his infamous speech that he gave in 1843 in Buffalo, New York at the National Convention of Colored People at the age of 27 really, I think, sparked the movement and what he was known as being a militant abolitionist, right? Before Henry Highland Garnet, abolitionist leaders, and of course the movement was focused more on moral persuasion and of course philanthropic support of whites. And of course Henry Highland Garnet said, enough with that game. We're going to focus on audacious self-assertion and of course armed rebellion. And I believe that he was even inspired, of course, by the success of the Haitian Revolution, which showed African people that through armed struggle we could become a free, proud, and self-determining people. So once again, the link is in the chat. I'll put the link in the chat one more time. Definitely want some brothers and sisters to tap in, be part of the conversation as we look to honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. And in doing so, I want you all to answer the question, what will you resist today, right? We know that the form of the numerous forms of anti-Black racism that we face today are much different than what our ancestors faced 100, 200 years ago. But they're extremely nuanced in nature as well. So I think I'm even going to do a show on what's the beef with other intersectionality. I'll put that down here. And then the question, of course, we would ask is, what will you resist today? We look at some nuanced forms of anti-Black racism that are a bit nebulous, right? They're not as clear as they used to be. So, of course, we want to just ask that question. What will we resist today? What can we do today to resist and continue that legacy of audacious self-assertion in the face of white hegemony? So we're here today to honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. Once again, as I stated before, he was born on this day, December 23rd, 1815, Eastern Shore, Maryland, and Kent County, Maryland. I believe that's on the eastern side of the Chesapeake Bay. I hope my geography buffs out there don't slaughter me, don't kill me, don't delete me if I got that wrong. But I think what is most important is that he was someone who was, of course, autodidactic, right? He freed himself. He was able to go to school at the African Free School, but more importantly, he understood that there was going to be a need for armed struggle. And I think oftentimes when we are having a conversation about Black resistance movements, and I think part of this is, of course, for two reasons. I think it's because of the prominence of Dr. King, and we know we can't mention Dr. King without mentioning Coretta Scott King, but also due to, of course, oftentimes whites controlling the narrative regarding how African people here in America resisted. We tend to find that there's a focus on nonviolent struggle, when historically this concept of armed resistance, armed rebellion was the norm. In fact, I can recall when I took a class on the history of the civil rights movement, the professor Hassan Jeffries, by the way, stated that the concept and ideal of African people when resisting in a nonviolent manner prior to the civil rights movement was actually alien, right? That was an alien concept that, hey, we're going to get hit and don't hit back. So I think that is something that's rather curious, right? And I think that we can discuss that as well. So definitely looking to have a great conversation regarding honoring the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet, one of the prominent and preeminent 19th century Black nationalists who I think is criminally underrated, criminally unspoken of. We know that there were a number of great Black nationalists and Pan-Africanists during that era, particularly David Walker, Anna Julia Cooper, who of course was a member of the planning committee for the the first Pan-African Congress that took place in 1900 in London, England, at the behest of course, Henry Sylvester Williams. Martin Delany, as we all know, was considered the father of Black nationalism. Then, of course, Bishop James T. Holly and Maria Stewart. So there were a number of prominent Black nationalists at that time. And of course, as a result, he oftentimes is overlooked. But today is the 207th. I want to repeat and be clear. Today is the 207th birthday of Henry Highland Garnet, born in Kent County, Maryland, on this day 207 years ago, December 23rd, 1815. And so, of course, he understood that as an African man, even as an African child at the time, that his life was not meant for servitude. So he did what he could in the way that he could to help free himself and, of course, others. And so he was not someone who believed in what being vulgarly individualistic, right? He got I would dare say, due to the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act, been oftentimes snatched right back into the shackles of chattel enslavement after, of course, freeing himself from becoming a prominent speaker and statesman for the African community. So once again, the link is in the chat. Hope you all can tap in and be part of the conversation where we're looking to honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet by asking the question, what will you resist today, right? So his clarion call to the Black community, to the African community was, let your motto be resistance, right? And so he made that statement at the end of his famous speech that he gave at the tender age of 27 years old at the 1843 National Convention of Colored People in Buffalo, New York. And so we definitely want to honor his life, his legacy, and of course, his spirit of resistance. And so the question is, what will we resist against today? Will it be the carceral state? Will it be miseducation? Will it be food deserts? Will it be misinformation? Will it be some of the internal issues that we face as a community? I'm known for stating that oftentimes we don't look at some of the internal issues in our community. Is it ratchet feminism? Is it ratchet masculinity? Is it the racially disempowering, self-defeating, and self-destructive ways that we live our daily lives? Will we resist against illiteracy, financial illiteracy? So there are a number of things that we can resist against as an African people. Do we resist against self-hatred? Do we resist against not forging ties with our brothers and sisters from other countries? So those are questions that we can ask. So I hope you all can join the chat, join the conversation. Brother Bawana, what say you? Yes, sir. Brother Bawana. Brother Bawana.
1 2 1 1 2.
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. It was probably the earphones. Yeah, you was asking the question, what should we resist right now?
Yes.
And I think for me personally, I try my best to resist ignorance, even though it's so pervasive. Even though it's so pervasive today. Indiscipline, I think discipline is something that we as a community really need to get a hold of. So we do what we can in that arena. I would also say we resist bad health and going back to the gym, bad eating habits, all that good stuff. We resist those things. We resist being complete consumers, and we try to be more inclined to be producers in this age and time. I think that we resist the idea of rugged individualism. There's a notion out there that it's self-made, that no one is completely self-made. Most people had to grow up within some kind of community, whether they would have watched it from a distance or within some kind of situation where they would have learned from people of the how-tos. So I kind of resist the notion of rugged individual. When you are a rugged individual, you out there like Kanye West. He has no community to come back to now. He has nowhere to go. You know what I mean? So he has all that money in the world, and he has nowhere to go anymore. Because he's not going to get fit in with the white community. He's definitely not going to come back to the black community. So his rugged individualism will have him being a hermit, an entity all unto himself. And I think that weakness that we should resist again. So I feel like as far as what do we resist, I would really consider those few things that I would have mentioned.
I think those are great things to resist. I think you're absolutely correct when you state that ignorance is pervasive. Resist being consumers. We know we live in a country. I live in a country. I think you're in the Bahamas, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. And I've been to the Bahamas, so shout out to the Bahamas. I've been to Nassau. Been to the straw market there. I've been to the straw market there.
Well, they hustlers, man. But that's another thing.
I mean, but they got to got to go hard in the paint. I think we need to resist being consumers. We know that is something that is oftentimes pushed on. It's rather prominent in the Western Hemisphere, in the global North. I also think that for African people, Dr. Amos Wilson talks about this in his seminal text, his massive text, Blueprint for Black Power, this concept and idea that unfortunately civil rights taught or inferred to many Black people that first-class citizenship came through being a consumer, right? But Dr. Amos Wilson teaches us that in order to be a free, proud, and productive people, and if we really want true equality, even though we shouldn't be looking to be equal with them folks, right? Because there's no one to be equal with. But he makes the argument that to do that, we have to be producers. And so
absolutely,
I concur with your statement.
Yes, I think it's an imperative in these days. I find it fascinating, the life of Mr. Garnet. He seemed to have been a traveler. He seemed to have gotten around, being in Jamaica and the different places that he would have ventured to. I think he was in Liberia for a time. I think that he died didn't he die in Liberia?
Yes, he did. Yes, he passed in Liberia. Yes, he did.
Yeah, so he exercised his right of freedom, even though it was the 1800s. And I think that our community really need to get out in the world a little bit more. I think that our stories are known in the entire world. But I think that is another thing that you learn in actually traveling the world and communicating with people face to face. And I think that there's a lot of things to be gotten in traveling in the world. So I think that we as a people, we need to exercise the right of movement and our passports, in particular, because we have the right to travel now. Back in the day, we couldn't travel. Now the fact that we do, and it's so cheap, I think that we should really exercise that right a little bit more than we do.
Yes, but I would agree. I think you're cooking with fish grease. Oftentimes when you come on the show, you are. And so that's why I always like having you here. But so let me ask you this. How familiar are you with Henry Highland Garnet? Then the second question would be, why do you think Henry Highland Garnet is oftentimes overlooked by many when we talk about prominent Black nationalist leaders in the 19th century?
Bro, I think I ran across him when I was hiding in the library when I was being pledged in the United States. When I was pledging, so I was reading a lot, man, because I was trying to duck the brothers, because man, they was going heavy on a guy. But I think that I briefly ran across him, not a whole lot of him, but I think that he is a person who's been written out of history because the fact that his interest was in fighting back. I think that these people, many of these people are written up. He is not a pacifist. He is not a turn the other person. He is not even I don't even think he was an integrationist. These kinds of people.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, I think that these kinds of people, they don't necessarily follow the American programming. And I think that America, the government of America, ensures that these kinds of people, in terms of being educated about them, are really, they really try to dissuade people from learning about these kinds of people, because they don't want the Black American population to have any ideas for themselves. Because if there was a guy named Robert F. Williams, I know you know who Robert F. Williams is. Yes, he is a person I'm thinking that would be a great interest to many, many people in terms of him traveling around the world, being very, very close quarters with very important people in history, and
Oh
also
yeah.
coming back to the United States. And I'm thinking to myself, why is he being mentioned in the same breath as a Malcolm X or a Martin
Right.
Luther King? But
Right.
I'm thinking that his energy was a little bit different, and he said so in an interview. So I'm saying these kinds of people are written out of history. They want the masses, people within the United States and outside of the United States to forget these kinds of people. So I
Right.
think that it's intentional. I personally believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. And we know this. I mean, this is America, right? And oftentimes what they do is they want to omit, of course, the history of anyone who was willing to rise up and in a rather extremely audacious, but also what many people would call violent manner, um, resist them. They try to write them out of history. If someone wasn't an integrationist, if someone wasn't talking about loving everyone, then oftentimes that's what takes place. I can recall I was on Brother Dynast Amir's channel uh, maybe a couple of days ago, and a brother was on there talking about how he loves everyone. And I said, okay. I said, well, what does that accomplish at the end of the day? What does loving everyone accomplish? And he's like, well, I don't hate anyone. I said, I never mentioned hate, right? But how does loving everyone get us somewhere? And I mentioned that Dr. King, and I have his autobiography behind me here, states in his autobiography, I believe it's on page 324, right? And I might even grab it and see if I can pull it out, but he states that love without power is sentimental and anemic, right? And so let me see if I can pull this up here. I might have it highlighted. Yes, he says, well, I'm cooking with fish grease. He says, what is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love, right? And so, of course, the brother didn't give an answer as dynamic as Dr. King's, but I mentioned that this idea and concept of just loving folk. So, where does that get us? How does that help us move forward in accomplishing our goals? And he was unable to give an answer.
Because he is conditioned. He's been conditioned. This notion of turn the other cheek. You know what? I think that it's unfair how Dr. King's image, in terms of his thoughts and his ideas,
Mm-hmm.
how he's portrayed. Because just as you would have read just now, he didn't talk about just frivolous notion of love. He said that there must be power behind it. So unless you would have done a deeper analysis or reading of King, you would really have this notion of, well, all our kids should get together and just love each other and forget about it. That wasn't Dr. King. I
No,
think that his image and his ideas and philosophy really needs to be revisited within our own community, because he wasn't as milk toast as
not
people
at all.
would
Not
have
at all.
thought he was.
Not at
I don't
all.
think
Not at
was.
all. Not at all. In fact, I can recall, and this is a book I had to read when I was an undergrad on the civil rights movement, entitled Struggle for Black Equality by, Dr. Harvard Sitkoff. And Dr. King had mentioned, of course, and as I think one of my Black History Facts a couple of days ago was that it was the 100th some anniversary of the ending, or it was the anniversary of the end of the Montgomery bus boycott. But Dr. King said that when they met with the city fathers of Montgomery before they decided to implement the bus boycott, that this was an issue of power, not love, not of morals. He said they have the power to do this, and we have to be, and we're powerless to stop them. And so we have to find the requisite power necessary to be able to overcome this racist and oppressive system that they were facing. And of course, they were able to do so. So this whole idea and concept is oftentimes rooted in the fact that people don't read King for himself. Absolutely.
And the United States government, they completely have distorted his ideas and what he stood for. And I
Right.
think that there is
They've done the
class.
same with Muhammad Ali. I mean, now he's a great American hero.
Yeah,
Muhammad Ali. They hated the dude. Took him up
and his guts.
rendered him impotent, where he couldn't even work to make a living in his profession.
Oh man!
Right, but now, but once he couldn't talk anymore, we love him.
Yeah, he's safe and dead. He's safe.
Absolutely. Now they want to claim him. Right, because I remember once I was giving a speech. I was on a panel, and I had mentioned W.B. Du Bois, and I said the African sociologist, and the brother said he's African American. And I said, I prefer not to give America credit for anything. Right. So I said, Du Bois was great because of African agency and because of African self-determination, because of African adaptive vitality. Right.
Oh man, that cognitive dissonance. He was a black guy who was kind of like, why? That cognitive dissonance kick right in. It's like, well, we's American. He's American.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
So
but I appreciate.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate the life of this gentleman. Liberia has a rich history because I'm hearing and reading that there were many people from the West trying to get to this Liberian experience and trying to create, I guess, a nation state there, and that is an untapped resource that I feel like we need to also investigate a little bit more, because it's the people, the blacks in the West, and in particular America and the Caribbean as well. There have been many people trying to I guess, to have that recreate this Liberian experience from way back in the day, and I think that that's not necessarily talked about enough. And I think that we probably need to, I don't know, man. I just think that we need to have more information about that particular state in Africa, that country in Africa, because there's been a long time back and forth between African Americans and Caribbean people going back and forth from Liberia, and I think that that's something that we should consider talking about a little bit more.
Absolutely. And you're in the Bahamas right now, so I'm gonna ask this question: what's the temperature there?
It's about, let me see. It's about 79. 79 degrees. Sorry.
Okay. And you know what the temperature is where I'm at?
What's that?
-5. So definitely, in the spirit of Henry Highland Garnet, need to travel and connect with African people right outside of America. Because I'm looking like a damn icicle right now. Okay?
Hey, brother Lumumba, when it's 73 degrees, I have to wear that power sweater, man. I'm cold. I'm cold. Exactly.
I bet. So yeah, we definitely we were hit with an Arctic vortex, as they like to call it.
Yes, sir.
So it's going to be rather cold for about a week. It's going to be below average, below expected lows. So yeah.
I didn't know Cleveland used to get that cold. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I went to school in Kentucky, so I am.
What institution?
University of Louisville. So I know the fact that it gets very, very cold in the in those areas, man.
Okay. So what was your experience like in Louisville? I know, as you know, this is the home of Muhammad Ali, at one point known as the Louisville Lip. What was your experience like in Louisville?
It was interesting because Louisville is an interesting state. It's an interesting area because you have I think it's more than 1 million black folks there, and they seem to be metropolitan people. If I was to describe them, they seem to be a little bit progressive. Many of them, I think Dr. Boyce Watkins is out of that area as well. So they seem to be progressive. What else? A little bit country, but this is South. This is the first time I heard the word fitna. I'm fitna good out there. Fitna. I didn't even know that was a word. But you get a mixture of both. You get a lot of country kinds of people, and you also get a lot of progressive, metropolitan people who would be able to fit as comfortably in the South as they would in New York City or Detroit or Washington D.C.
Here's one of the things I think is rather peculiar about Louisville. So Louisville is considered the northernmost southern city and the southernmost northern city.
Is that right? Is that right?
It is. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm a geography buff. Also, and this is just geography moment. The Ohio River reaches its widest point just west of downtown Louisville.
Wow.
Yes,
wow.
It's over 1 mile wide. So
wow. It's interesting. I've listened to a few people out of Ohio, yourself and there's another girl. Her name was she was a blogger as well. She was from out of Ohio. Her name is African Superstar or African S Superstar, something like that. And it seems like there is a a gene of people who are like very aware, very progressive in their thoughts. They have this little African tinge to them, and I didn't know. I thought Ohio would have been, kind of like the Midwestern city. I
Come
think
on, brother.
Ohio is
Come on,
like the
brother.
Bible.
You got to put some
Okay,
respect in our name. Come on now, you got to put some
I know
respect.
Ohio players. I know Ohio players. I
Come
know
on,
Ohio
you know what I'm
players.
saying?
I know
So,
Ohio
so, so,
players.
so let me ask you this: what are your thoughts on Henry Highland Garnet being opposed to women's leadership in the abolitionist movement?
I think that's another one of the other reasons why he has been written out of history, because right now we have this feminist thing going on, this feminist movement going on, and the fact that he could be perceived as a misogynist because he didn't necessarily want that female leadership or having. But I'm understand he's coming out of slavery. He's trying to reassert and reignite black male manhood. Why would you want to push a woman to that experience? I don't know why. I would understand that he is a man of his time. And I don't, like I told this to you before in another discussion. There's nothing wrong with black male leadership.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. And it's as soon as that starts to assert itself, you see the females coming from under the background saying, "Oh, we need to be a part of," and it's like they want to get to the front. Oh, what's the purpose of that? Let the black male exert himself. Let him be a male again and do the things that he need to do. He's not throwing you away. What I mean? He's not disparaging you. He's not putting you in a garbage can, but he needs to exert himself as a man, and he has that right on this planet. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
So
wrong with
why
that
do
at
you
all.
think
And I
that is
think
something
that
that
we've been pushing.
why do you think that's something that's pushed
Say that again.
in our community? Why do you think that's something that's preeminent in our community? That whenever a man takes a position of
I
leadership,
think
push for the man to be undermined or step down, and the woman needs to step forward.
because I think that it's for me. I think that the United States of America says that there is only one man in my house, and he is the white man. What I mean? Think that having another man in his house is an affront to him. So we could accept the women. We could accept the women, but as far as a woman being a woman in my house, because we don't mind having a bunch of women in my house, but to say that this is my house and there's and a man represents leadership, a man represents control, a man represents power. In terms of what the United States has created, they say was only one male in my house, which is the white male. We are white supremacists. This is my house. You know what I mean? So, if you are trying to be a man, and if you are trying to be a man in my house, we are gonna castigate you. We're gonna demoralize you. We're gonna feminize you because there's only supposed to be one man in my house. This is what the United States says. And if you look at it, any person, any black male person who has tried to exert their black male manhood, they've either been cut down, killed, deported, all manner of things. So I think that this is the message the United States government is saying to its citizens. And I think that that's the reason black male manhood is always an affront not only to the white establishment, but even black people as well. Even black people as well, they will always question black male manhood in terms of leadership because this is a cognitive dissonance in their mind. At the helm of any form of leadership is supposed to be a white person, that white male in particular. So I think that this is the reason why it's for tooth and nail when we have these images of black male manhood. It doesn't
Got
compute.
Got it. Absolutely, absolutely. They're supposed to be black men are supposed to be a triple threat: trip, stumble, fumble, right? And when that doesn't happen, there's an issue there, right? Almost what we like to call white fragility, right? And they feel uncomfortable, and as a result, they tend to try to take corrective action outside of our community, even inside of our community, to try to bring black men down who present a unstereotypical and uncompromising representation of African manhood in the United States. So if you're watching, hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, hit that subscribe and like button, as well as the notification bell. We're having a discussion where we are honoring the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. He was one of the less prominent, but extremely important Black nationalist leaders of the 19th century. Today is his birthday. He was born on this day 207 years ago, December 23rd, 1815, in Kent County, Maryland. That's Eastern Shore, Maryland. And he is known for his rousing speech that he gave at the tender age of 27 at the National Convention of Colored Peoples in 1843 in Buffalo, New York, in which he advocated for armed resistance against enslavement by enslaved Africans here in America. And he ended the speech by stating, "Let your motto be resistance." And so we're asking the question, and Brother Bawana answered that question rather profoundly in an extremely robust manner, and we appreciate that. And the question is, what will you resist today? Once again, we're honoring the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. So tap in, the link is in the chat. If you don't want to tap in, but want to, of course, leave a comment regarding Henry Highland Garnet or what you're looking to resist, not only in honoring Henry Highland Garnet and continuing the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion, but also as we move into the new year, what is it that you're looking to resist? And so that's the question that we're asking as we honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. Once again, brothers and sisters, if you're watching, do me a favor, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Smash the thumbs up button. So, Brother Bawana, I'm gonna leave it to you. You could give final thoughts.
It's been interesting. Going through the life of he was a doctor, Mr. Garnet. You know, you guys, or let me say you guys, all of us, the Black world, has benefited greatly from our ancestors, from the fact that these guys were very resilient. These guys were determined. These guys, I'm appreciating the fact that a lot of these guys didn't necessarily have formal education, but the fact that they took the initiative to educate themselves and prove themselves in the world, and they were very self-determining. I think that these are people that we could learn from and going forward. And not only the brothers and sisters who would have not necessarily went to universities, but the brothers who would have educated themselves within universities as well. I think that all of these people have given great contributions to the Black world, and it's for us now. In 2023 is about to be to add on, to stand on the shoulders of what these guys would have done and take our situation forward. Because I hate to say struggle, but to take our situation forward and do something bigger and brighter, so our great grandchildren and our children coming after us could stand on our shoulders. Because these brothers and sisters have already created history for us. So now it's time for us to create our own history and give it, passing on to the next generation. We are like a cog in a wheel, trying to get to the top. So I think that's going to eventually happen, but we have to push this momentum forward and do the things that we need to do. But I appreciate the time, Brother Lumumba. I'm still waiting. The new year, you say you should be finished your PhD, so I'm waiting to call you this Dr. Lumumba.
Yes, sir. I'm working on it now. And one of the things that I'm going to resist is complacency. Another thing I'm going to resist is not being a producer. So I have some things in the works to actually create some products, sweaters, T-shirts, etc.
Yes, sir.
And so, and I know there was another sister who came on and asked me a question. Hey, when is that going to be ready? When's that going to be jumping? So,
yeah, she did.
yeah. I mean, she's calling me out. You know what I'm saying? She calling.
Yeah, they're ready. They're ready.
So I got to pull up. Right.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
I think anytime we're pulling up in a positive manner, pulling up and being productive, right, and benefiting our community in a manner that is sorely needed, I'm all for that. And so I just wanted to make sure that we came in, as I stated before, as a Pan-Africanist, as someone who believes in what our great sister, one moment, let me see, Fannie Lou Hamer taught us, right, to always never forget where you come from and always praise the bridges that carried us over. I would be remiss in my duty as a Pan-Africanist if I didn't take the time out to honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet, who taught us to let our motto be resistance. That might be another one of my tattoos. Okay.
Did you do something, Brother Lumumba? Did you do something on Sister Fannie Lou Hamer yet?
I have not done something on Fannie Lou Hamer, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to either do it on her birthday. I'm going to do it during Women's History Month.
Yes. Her the Garvey ladies. I think that their stories, Amy Jakes and
Amy Ashwood, absolutely.
You're right. I think that their stories are fascinating. I think that you've done a whole lot of men, which is good. I think that
you're right about that. You're right about
my
that.
own edification.
Yeah, and
it's my own edification. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is my daughter's gonna hit me upside the head and say, "Where the sisters at?" You know what I mean? So definitely,
that's true.
Have some literature on them. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a show on entitled "Set the World on Fire." That's a great book that I read by Dr. Keisha Blaine. He was formerly, this is the book right here, "Set the World on Fire: Black Nationalist Women in the Global Struggle for Freedom" by Dr. Keisha Blaine. She formerly was a professor of history at the University of Pittsburgh, but she's now at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. So she's made her way to the Ivy Leagues, and she's also she also edited the book 400 Souls. So with Ibrahim, the brother who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. So she's moving up the ranks in terms of her career as a professor. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a show on Black nationalist women and the global struggle for freedom. And of course, it will be entitled "Set the World on Fire," and where we almost be doing a book review of course, Dr. Blaine's book. I actually reached out to her to see if she could do a show with me, but she said that she was extremely busy, as most tenure track professors are, publishing, writing, reviewing manuscripts, editing a journal, and so she, of course, didn't have the time. But this book actually highlights the Garvey movement, the Pan-African movement, after Garvey, of course, was deported and when he transitioned to the realm of the ancestors, which I believe was on June 10th, 1940. And it highlights how many Black women throughout the African world worked to continue the struggle.
Yes, that's right. That's right. The women, yes.
So we believe in sisters in the struggle. We
Definitely.
also believe in duality, right? So we can't have male without female. We can't have female without male. We do not believe in the self-defeating gender politics of oppression, right? To where we're now competing with each other and being used against each other like pawns on a chessboard. We do not believe in that, right? We believe that we need to move together and move strong. And so I appreciate you, Brother Bawana. For highlighting that. And the thing is, I need to be doing that throughout the year, not just token times like Women's History Month, because that's disrespectful. Our sisters aren't tokens. They are sisters and soldiers, of course, in the struggle.
Absolutely. And they have something to they contributed greatly as well. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I appreciate the time, brother. I know hundreds of people are going to listen to this interview after the fact. It's the 23rd now, so people are getting they're traveling right now. So I'm thinking that's probably why I didn't get a lot of tap-ins. But I'm sure.
All right. I'm sure. But as you know, so tomorrow we're going to have a show, and I might push it back because of the holiday season. But we're planning on having a show on ratchet masculinity.
Yeah, I want to see that one.
So we were looking at doing a show on ratchet masculinity.
Yes.
It's scheduled for tomorrow, but we have to push it back. Yeah, tomorrow is Christmas Eve, so some people may not tap in, but some people I think will. And then of course, I'm going to be hosting a Kwanzaa celebration in Cincinnati on the 26th. So I'm going to make sure I tap in live in the natty, the nasty natty, as they say. And of course, we're going to be celebrating Kwanzaa at the Woodlawn Recreation Center from 3:30 to 8 p.m. So definitely want some brothers and sisters to be with me in spirit as I'll be hosting the Kwanzaa celebration there, where we're going to be celebrating the foundational principle of Umoja, which of course is unity, which teaches us to strive for and maintain unity in our family, community, nation, and race.
Yes, sir. Brother Lumumba, one last question. The brother who spoke to you yesterday, where was he from? Was he from Brazil?
Which brother?
I think that you guys was talking about the what's the African leader's name? You guys was talking about the African leader. Blaise Compaoré is not Blaise Compaoré. The president of what's the African country name? Oh,
I know you're talking about. No, that brother is from Grenada. He's
Grenadian. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
He's from Grenada.
I got you. Okay, all right. What's the name of the person, Brother Lumumba? I'm trying to remember. What's his name?
You're talking about Thomas Sankara.
Thomas Sankara, that's his name.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. So the brother was from Grenada. I would like to talk to him about Maurice Bishop and the
Yes.
revolution down there.
And his name is Dwayne Omuwale. I'm gonna put his name in the chat. You can look him up. He's on Twitter, and of course he is on. He has a YouTube channel as well.
Okay, very well informed, brother.
Yes, absolutely. He's a scholar. He's a author. He's written 23 books on the struggle of African people on the continent and throughout the diaspora. 23 keyword 23 23. We talk about like Mike Jordan and Red and Black. Okay.
Yeah.
We are
I could hear it. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna check him out on YouTube. But I appreciate the time, bro. Until next time, I guess. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Okay.
And so once again, I'm gonna leave it open. We're gonna stay on just a few minutes more because some brothers and sisters want to tap in and discuss, the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. And of course, if you want to share what you will be willing, what are you going to resist against today? As we know, Henry Highland Garnet taught us to let our motto be resistance. He taught us that no oppressed people have ever secured their liberty without resistance. And so we're going to leave the link in the chat if you want to just tap in rather quickly and share with us what you are willing to resist today. As I stated before, rather ad nauseum, that Henry Highland Garnet taught us to let your motto be resistance, and that any oppressed people will remain oppressed. We will never secure our liberty without resistance. So once again, we're honoring the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet, who was born on this day 207 years ago, December 23rd in 1815 in Kent County, Maryland. That's Eastern Shore, Maryland. As we know, he was born into slavery and of course was able to find freedom. Became educated at the African Free School in New York City. Of course, an autodidactic. He was an African American. He was a leader, a Black nationalist, and of course, an advocate of abolition, of the abolition movement of African America for African Americans. And of course, he was known as the Militant Abolitionist due to advocating that the manner in which he believed that the ending of chattel slavery would take place was due to African Americans taking up arms, enslaved African Americans taking up arms against, of course, their slave masters, their oppressors, those who held them in bondage. So just wanted to make sure that we took time out to honor the life and legacy of Henry Highland Garnet. Until next time, brothers and sisters, you all know what to do. Peace.